Hello and welcome to Carlos Castaneda, the Wheel of Time, the wisdom of the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. Today I'm going to be interpreting more quotes from Tales of Power from the Wheel of Time, Don Juan. Whenever the internal dialogue stops, the world collapses and extraordinary facets of ourselves surface as though they have been kept heavily guarded by our words. So it's words, concepts, descriptions, categories, ideas, any concept that we can hold in the mind, any framework or worldview that we can manifest in the tonal, in the everyday state of consciousness, is fraught with suspicion by sorcerers, because if one has intensity and conviction, it so easily becomes a habit or routine, a final conclusion, a final judgment, and no such assertions can be made upon a reality that is always in flux, that is always changing. So the sorcerer aims to get a more profound, fluid understanding, as it were, rather than a conviction. One must beware of convictions, because convictions are the ultimate expression of the tonal, of the self-importance. If one has a strong conviction about someone or something, that is the ugly face of self-importance showing itself. Now I'm going to go more into this. I'm not saying self-importance is a bad thing. I'm saying that it has a certain purpose. There are good things about self-importance. Don't get me wrong. Good things being, like feeling worthy, feeling capable in oneself, being capable, being effective, being efficient, being strong, being disciplined. All these things that naturally come from a healthy sense of self. You could call the good self-importance. But I don't really like to use that word self-importance in that sense, because if we place importance upon the self to the exclusion of everything in the field of awareness, then we tend to have very biased ideas, limited ideas, you see, because it's fixed at a point in space and time. We've become convicted. We have a conviction. We are convinced. You see. So things have a different meaning in the sorcerer's world, and those strange phenomena, these mysterious phenomena, these esoteric phenomena, words are fingers pointing to the moon, because there's no way to describe them. And when the internal dialogue comes to an end and inner silence manifests, one is able to see and feel and experience and beckon in the spirit. One is able to follow its designs, you see. Now, in the tonal, we're not generally aware of a guiding spirit, a living force. But nonetheless, for sorcerers, it is an everyday experience. So, when the internal dialogue is silenced, the things of the Nagual the mystery, unusual occurrences, supernormal manifestations, supernatural visions, supernormal phenomena, extrasensory perceptions, psychic intuitions, various other occult forms, experiences, and so on manifest. But we have become accustomed, we've become used to, habituated to the world of ordinary reality, the tonal, and its conclusions, its judgments, its beliefs, ideas, reasoning, and various forms of nationalistic pride, patriotism, the allegiance to some group, leader, or philosophy, or social structure or concept, or something that's perhaps been read in a book and has been adopted as having practical use in one's life, various other occupations and pastimes are nonetheless, to a sorcerer, able to be apprehended in a way that makes sense when it is considered as part of the whole's purpose, which is manifesting in this individuating being, this psychophysical form that you insist upon calling yourself, so to speak. And as Don Juan says, which he said in the next quote that's coming up, the world is unfathomable. The world is unfathomable, and so are we. And so is every being that exists in the world. Now, if we just look at the long chain of history, we can see things, a lot of bad things, a lot of negative things, and some amazing advancements in science and humankind, and various laws that come into effect that have created great advances in human civilization, like the outlawing of slavery and giving women the right to vote, and giving blacks the right to vote, and the Human Rights Charter, and all of the beneficial things that human beings have invented, adopted, and so on and so forth. Nonetheless, have a far greater meaning than simply something that we can glean through mere philosophical analysis or speculation, or having an opinion about it. You know, like a commentator or a critical theorist to a deeper degree, sociologist perhaps, a great intellectual. There are other dimensions to this existence, and in those other dimensions, different laws operate, and it's not necessarily all about us and our collective human destiny. It's not even about our own personal destiny, because other beings are involved here, other entities that have consciousness, that have awareness, that have intention, that have organizational capacities and principles of their own, you see. And various wars have been fought and will continue to be fought in both the physical dimension here on Earth and in the astral planes. Warfare exists in those dimensions between sorcerers, shamans, masters, martial artists, and so on, men of and women of magical power, men, women of power, have these battles. There are such things as cosmic and psychic weapons and so on. And various power animals and magical dragons, and we could go into the pantheon of Taoist gods, Taoist immortals, or Hindu gods, or Buddhist bodhisattvas, and various other mystical archetypes. But I don't want to stray too far from Don Juan's Toltec view and how I can explore Nagualism without necessarily becoming too identified with a view that is preoccupied with things like power animals and power gods and various other earthly phenomena. So, moving on. And just to add that everything is unfathomable in the Nagual, in the unknown. We don't actually know what anything is exactly. I mean, looking at any object, we can see that it doesn't have independent existence. It doesn't exist all by itself. The table could not exist without a level platform to stand on, and that platform also needs to be raised by pillars that have to be supported by the earth. So everything's all phenomena, and even in the elemental dimensions, are dependent upon the arising of other elements, other phenomena. Not to get too metaphysical here, but it's enough to say that in the Nagual, in the unknown, in the sorcerer's world, there are no definites, there are no guarantees. Everything is open for exploration and understanding and alignment. You see, so there's much more to the universe than just what's apparently going on in planet Earth. Wars, natural disasters, famines, and other nasty things that appear to us as evil do indeed have a purpose in another dimension, and the cosmos is always attempting to balance itself in some way. You see, it's never quite in balance on the evolutionary scale. How could it be? If it was perfectly in balance, there would be no impetus for evolution, hence a need for adversarial forces that come in all directions, like flyers, or enemy sorcerers, enemy warriors, and politicians, and other leaders. Why do they exist? Because precisely for this purpose of evolution, you see, for the evolution of the whole. If we become too identified with the part, the personal, then we will fail to get a holistic understanding, which is always impersonal and personal at the same time. So moving on. Warriors do not win victories by beating their heads against walls but by overtaking the walls. Warriors jump over walls, they don't demolish them. Right, so yeah. The head-banging approach, using brute force, is not the warrior's way. There might come a time in battle, in some kind of adversarial conflict, when it's necessary to use brute force, but tackling the obstacles of everyday life do not require headbanging or brute force. They require strategy, manoeuvring, intelligence, awareness, proper planning, preparation, and so on. You can't go into these things without giving them due respect, approaching them with the seriousness they deserve. And striking through walls is too crude a method. It takes too much energy. Something that we can't afford to lose as warriors or sorcerers. You see, if something is, we talk about ethics and morality. Some philosophers like to make final statements on what is good and bad, what is moral and immoral. But again, that is all part of the tonal, and it works well in that world. In order, if one is interested in being virtuous and gaining virtue, but to gain virtue is more than simple ordinary morality, tonal morality. It's more than that. You see, it's a genuine inquiry into the nature of things and how things should be approached energetically. I mean, if we were going to introduce concepts of good or bad, then we would have to say that as sorcerers, anything that weakens or drains or leaks energy is bad, and anything which gains energy, which acquires energy, which stores energy, is good. We think in terms of impeccability rather than morality. Not that the warrior has no morality. He won't necessarily, wouldn't consider him a warrior if his business was just mindless killing, easy to kill, easy to bomb, hard to create, hard to fix, hard to heal. Things that take a long time, that require patience, diligence. So it is necessary to develop sensitivity to all forms of life and to be able to handle our affairs in ways that do not allow us to become weakened, because to be without energy is to be in danger. A warrior must cultivate the feeling that he has everything needed for the extravagant journey that is his life. What counts for a warrior is being alive. Life in itself is sufficient, self-explanatory, and complete. Therefore, one may say, without being presumptuous, that the experience of experiences is being alive. So, that which is always already the case, life itself, before any opinions about it are made, before any judgments are cast, one must appreciate the totality of life, simply by witnessing it, you see. How do we release that pain, the contraction that holds us fixed if we are bound in some way, if we are experiencing bondage, pain, suffering by any name we wish to give to it? We see in our meditations, in our contemplations, that this contraction, this restriction, constriction, this feeling of limitation in our body, mind, in our psyche, in our energy bodies, in our emotional bodies, when we see and inspect the contraction, that is the releasing of it. The seeing of it is the release of it, you see? Because any intention to let go, to release, is the very thing that stops it being released. You see? Now, examine this for yourselves, don't just take my word for it. We must develop that speed of perception to be able to catch it, that tiny cubic centimetre of chance, to be able to pluck it, you know. So that which is always already the case before perception arises, before any feeling or judgment about it or thought about it occurs, if we can just catch it in its flight, then as it recedes from us, rather, we can apprehend the totality of the true self, the ultimate, the divine, the thing we have no names for, the Tao. So, what counts for a warrior, a practitioner, is that feeling, the feeling of being alive. That is the most special thing, the most beautiful thing, the most wondrous thing. I'm just here to be alive. I am alive. How strange. So, the feeling of aliveness. How much life do you have in you? You can see how much life a person has in them by the shine in their eyes, right? And how much energy they radiate, how positive do you feel in their presence, enlivened, deepened, that sort of, having intense feelings about something or someone, right? So, in the knowledge of whatever is arising in consciousness, in the witness, from the witness position of observing and detachment, we can see the totality, or more of the totality, as the contraction releases. And then life reveals its own secrets. Not in ways that we can just simply understand and talk about them and make conclusions about them. You know, we might give it a bash, but ultimately, life itself is its own explanation, its own magic. See? An average man thinks that indulging in doubts and tribulations is a sign of sensitivity, spirituality. The truth of the matter is that the average man is the farthest thing imaginable from being sensitive. His puny reason deliberately makes itself into a monster or a saint, but it is truthfully too little for such a big monster or sainthold. Of course, when you see the spirit in all its dimensions and in all its manifest beauty and majestic glory, it can't be limited to some image you have in your mind, some description, whatever description or image you have of yourself as this great person, as this cool guy, this cool girl, this, uh, employee of the month. And even if you think of yourself in more lofty spiritual terms, like a god or a goddess, many people do, they can just look at Facebook every day, So, or call yourself by some spiritual sounding name, being esoterically inclined, perhaps, that you're engaged in matters of the occult, and you might have some lofty spiritual ideal. You might have some elevated opinion or idea of yourself, but in reality, even that godly or saintly image is puny compared to seeing the totality. And I think we'll leave it there.